If we haven't met before, my name is Fred Copestake. I am founder of Brindis, which is a sales training consultancy. Over the last 25 years, been around the world 14 times, worked in 38 different countries, trained over 10,000 salespeople. Yes, salespeople, that is where I operate. And so I was incredibly honored, I think, to have done this, but then when Alex has said, well, that experience, can you come and share some of that stuff with the procurement community? And it was an absolute no-brainer. It really was something that I wanted to do. I do want to do. I plan on learning a lot doing this, and hopefully can share some of the thinking that I've been doing around where sales is at now, how we need to operate, and ideally will help you guys do two things. One of those is recognize good salespeople. Think about who you want to work with, and just get rid of the ones who aren't being very helpful. Really that. Also, you will be selling ideas, selling concepts. Everyone lives by selling something. Robert Louis Stevenson said that in the year he said that. I can't remember what it is, but it's over 200 years ago. And I think it's absolutely true. You know, you guys will be selling concepts. So if I can share things which help people think about this and we can all learn to communicate better, for me, sales and procurement, very much two sides of the same coin. So in the last session, if you didn't listen to that, you can always go back, find that either within the Alchemie Network, see it on my YouTube channel. And actually, I've made it a podcast now. So you can listen to that, because I talked about the evolution of sales. I've talked about how the sales profession has moved on trying to get better, and sort of things you could look out for what good salespeople are doing. What I promised in that, though, was to go a bit deeper around one particular area, and that is the area of selling through partnering skills or collaborative selling. That's what I wrote my first book about. So the red book you can see behind me if you're watching this on video, that is all about selling through partnering skills, because I believe that if we approach thinking like a partner, now whether this is going to be a full-on partnership or not, then we're going to do a better job as a salesperson. It means that you, procurement, are able to react, respond, collaborate, co-create better with a salesperson who's acting in that way. And this all came about, as I said, by studying what's going on now, where the world of sales is taking us, what people respond to better. But I also came across this concept of PQ, lesser known cousin of IQ and EQ. So IQ, intelligence, a typical test for intelligence, though really that's kind of logical, spatial, numerical, and verbal reasoning. EQ is your emotional intelligence. So that's about emotional intelligence. So the ability to recognize your own thoughts and feelings and be able to respond to that, manage yourself. Also recognize what might be going on with others. And again, adjusting and managing that. So empathy, big part of it. That's huge for salespeople, and I suspect huge for procurement professionals as well. But PQ is very specifically about partnering skills. This was researched at about the same time that Daniel Goleman was doing his work on EQ, emotional intelligence. A guy called Steve Dent did this. So he was contracted by some big organizations that were getting involved in big old partnerships, you know, the kind of the airplane alliances, that sort of stuff. And they said, look, can you help us do this stuff more effectively? So he went away, studied what would make this better, make it easier for people to work together. And well, to cut a long story short, he came back with the concept that organizations don't partner, people do. These are people skills. And I was looking at this and reading about it because I was looking at some very specific work in Channel, and it just struck me that every single salesperson would benefit from understanding this stuff, because they would then be able to act more collaboratively, they would work better with and for the customer. So I looked at these and just developed those into a model where we can use those things in the way we operate. And that's what I plan to do today. I want to share these 6 elements of partnering skills so that you can think about, well, how can you partner in your own organization with your own functions that you're serving, but also have a look at those cheeky salespeople and see, are they doing stuff which is in line with this? And if they're not, have a think about, well, do I want to work with them? If they are, think, well, okay, I get what they're doing. They've got my best interests at heart. So I will, I'll try to work with them. It takes 2 to tango. And that's very much what this is all about. So these 6 elements of partnering skills well, they've been validated and verified. This isn't something I made up. So this guy called Steve Dent, he's looked at this, studied it, and then taken it to the University of Minnesota, where they verified, validated the way in which he's operated. So yeah, that's what we're going to cover today. So hi Joyce, hi Seema, thanks for joining us. Hi Margaret also. Good to see you here. So right, let's go through these 6 elements. I'm going to try and keep this fairly punchy again. I will be keeping an eye on chat. If there's any questions, any comments you want to make, if you want to have your own little sidebar discussions in there, crack on. I love it when this is going on. But we'll start at the very beginning. These things all work together. I talk about them sequentially. I can't talk about everything at once. But when I do, I tend to start off talking about trust. Trust is the foundation of all relationships. Trust is how we can communicate better. If we can't trust people, if we're not building trust in the way we're operating, any talk of partnership, any talk of relationship is going to be difficult. So we need to think about what are some of the things we can do to build trust. Now, there's various tools, there's various techniques or ways of working I will talk to salespeople about and say, look, do this deliberately. One of the things is transparency. Now, I'd say to people, be transparent, tell people the truth, help them make informed decisions. We've got a bad enough reputation as it is, but if you can start to act in this way, it might throw people a little bit to start with. But when they realize you're doing this with their intentions, or their best as your main intention, then this will start to set you apart. And in fact, that becomes part of the trust equation. While I was researching this, I came across the trust equation in the book by the Trusted Advisors. So these are 3 Harvard business professors. So smart guys. And they have this equation which helps us understand how trust works. I've distilled it into this. Oh, this is awesome. Let's have a look at it. So if you want to write it out, it's T equals C plus R plus I divided by S. Okay, so T equals trust equals credibility. You know your stuff. Reliability. You do what you say you're going to do. Intimacy. You're going to be careful and caring with any information that's shared. Okay, lots of people do that. That in itself won't necessarily set people apart. But when we see it as the equation, it's divided by S. S is self-orientation. So if you're doing all this stuff, but you're only doing it because it's going to get you what you want, and that's really what you care about, and the other party isn't that important, well, the whole trust element will fall down. So self-orientation, you're doing this because you genuinely care about the other party. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just looking at there in the notes there. Seamus, well, absolutely 100%. Cannot agree more. The golden word, but equally difficult to build. Oh, it's really easy to bandy it around. It's very easy to say, yeah, I'm a trusted advisor. And if I ever hear a salesperson, I say, no, you don't decide that. You do not decide that. That is the customer that bestows that honor on you. Yeah. Trust is everything in all things. Yeah. Relationships. Yeah. And then Seamus put in again here, trust. A lot of debate on this factor. Should we have this from the beginning in relationships, or should we leave it to develop on the go? I guess my take on this is that we try to build it from the very beginning, but it is also something that's earned. So you can't just expect it straight away. It's something that we build by the way we act, the way we prove in which we do stuff, because we can show that credibility, that reliability, that intimacy, and at the same time that what we're doing has got the other party's best interests at heart. So I think we try to get it going as best we can, but then we can start to build it. One of the techniques that I talk about, and actually I'll pick up on this in a minute because transparency is one of the elements, is that we can lead with a flaw. I learned this off a guy called Todd Capone, who wrote The Transparency Sale. And what he says is that we can say to customers, hey, look, I've been looking at what you do, and if this is the most important thing for you, we might not be the right option. However, if this, and this are also important to you, then absolutely we're right. The very thing that you're putting yourself out there as potentially not being the solution for somebody, it's very disarming, and probably quite surprising for many. And we'll start to get that trust built faster because you're willing to put yourself in harm's way. Yeah. Alex has put here, and I like this one. I start with, I trust you, but you can lose it. Yeah. And if you lose it, it's going to be really hard to rebuild it. It's possible, but you've got to do a ton of other extra trust building things to get there. Okay, we could talk about this one thing for the whole session, and maybe one day I'll do a live just on that one element. But we've got another 5 to go through. And then so the second one I want to talk about, it's about having a win-win focus. Win-win focus. Now, again, you've probably heard about that. Yeah, this is all about mutual benefit. It's all about kind of reciprocity. It's all about that both parties have got to be happy. It takes two to tango. And if we're not developing that, what's the point? Yeah. So, yeah, the stereotypical salesperson, I guess, is the one that's win-lose. So I don't care if you do all right, as long as I get my deal. Who cares? But I can honestly tell you that I probably meet more salespeople that are in danger of having a lose-win. They try so hard to set it up so the customer gets something out of it. They could be doing themselves damage. Yeah, they might not be making the margin they need. It might not be such a good deal that's sustainable. As I often have to do work around that area. But going from the very beginning, talking about that we need to have this win-win scenario, is certainly something that's really important in sales. But here I'm talking about this as a partnering skill. But what kind of partnership can there be if the partners aren't taking something out of it? It will be crazy. Yeah. On a little sidebar, I'm actually talking to salespeople now about win-win-win. So 3 wins. Your customer has to win, your company has to win, but your conscience also has to win. The way in which you go about doing business, it has to be aligned to your values, has to be good and proper and decent. That's that book there behind me. That's the ethical selling piece. That's the next iteration of sales where I think we will be seeing more and more emphasis put. Yeah, you guys as customers have every right to demand this, and that good salespeople should be understanding what makes this, because actually it's best practice in selling anyway. Yeah. So win-win scenario, just having a little look in comments over here. Win-win, how to gauge, and do we always have the luxury to choose on behalf of our organization? Yeah, that's an interesting point. My take, because I'm coming at it from sales, is that the salesperson should be very, very aware what the customer's win is. That's what we're aiming towards. One of the things I'll often talk about is that we don't actually sell products or service, we sell outcomes. So we've got to understand the outcome that you're looking for, which is essentially your win. And if we're not setting up at the very beginning to think and talk about that, we're missing the whole point of what we're doing. So we should be taking you towards that. Okay, I can deliver that, but it's got to make sense from my side as well. because if not, it's not going to be sustainable, and I can't give it you forever. And then actually that's no good for either party. Any lose, win, win, lose, it ends up as a lose-lose potentially. So we've got to be thinking about what that means. It'll have an impact on how we negotiate, how we have discussions, how we deal with conflicts. Yeah, we might well have conflicts, customers and companies, but actually from conflict we can get some really good stuff. So that's an element that people who have strong partnerships recognize what the other party is trying to achieve and will try to help them get that. Which leans into the third element, and this is about interdependence. Interdependence, I say to salespeople. Not independence. Can be quite an independent role where you go off and you're doing your own thing and you've got a whole lot of empowerment and accountability. But we are interdependent with our customers. Their success is our success. Back to that concept of selling outcomes. What are they trying to achieve? That should be what we're talking about. Understanding that, helping customers understand that, and working out how do we move towards that? What does our action plan look like, mutual action plan, to get us both there? So, interdependence. This is where we need to give up elements of control, because some things are going to be out of our hands. The other party needs to be bringing this to what we're doing. So that's certainly something that we need to be thinking of. Customer success is our success, and if we look in some industries, some sectors, and it seems to be something that's growing now, there is a role of customer success manager, which is awesome. It's not just like, well, we sold you this stuff, right, see you, bye. It's we are working with you to make sure you achieve that success that we sold you. Yeah, partly self-centered because it would mean that you're less likely to churn and we're going to get some future sales. But equally, that's what we sold you. There's a responsibility to do that. So there we go. We've talked about trust. We've talked about win-win focus. We've talked about interdependence. The fourth thing, sorry, can't even count, that I want to talk about is transparency. So I've already mentioned it in passing because it has such an impact on trust. Steve Dent in the original talked about self-disclosure and feedback. So that's giving information about yourself, yeah, but also giving customers feedback on themselves. So I would say to salespeople, absolutely, you need to give feedback to customers. If they've said they're going to work in a certain way, if you've agreed we're going to work on things together to create value, yeah, for the relationship to function well, and they're not doing their part, you've absolutely got to say that. They might not realize they're not doing it. It might be deliberate, but you've got to give that feedback. Equally, we as sales want feedback. Is what we're doing landing? Is it making a difference? Is it helpful? Is it moving us towards where we want to be? Customers should give us feedback, and we should set up to be able to get feedback from people. That's what I would say with this part. But I now tend to use the word transparency. It feels a bit more of a modern word. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people talk about a lot of stuff. But some people can actually do this. They can tell you what it is they're thinking, what it is that makes sense for them, what it is they're trying to achieve. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got to actually share every single thing down to your kind of margins and everything. Maybe you do. It might make sense to do that in some circumstances. But to be transparent, to be open and honest, to have clear exchange, constant exchange of information makes a hell of a lot of sense. And again, in ethical selling, I go on, I talked about informed decision making, then letting people make decisions with all the appropriate information. None of that sort of, well, I'll just hold this back because it doesn't really suit me to tell you. We're going to give all that information and not put pressure onto customers. Salespeople are doing that, don't believe are selling effectively. Yeah, and you'll probably find that is something you equally don't like. Okay, good. Just checking the questions. Or comments, nothing else in there. I will keep us moving on because time is flying. I've realized we've been talking for about 20 minutes. So in that case, let's talk about Comfort with change. Comfort with change. This is another of the partnering skills, the 6 partnering skills. Again, the words, the thing I'm saying to salespeople is we sell change. You know, we want people, or we want to help people do things differently or do different things. Now, we've also got to be able and willing to change ourselves. It's all very well pushing change, challenging status quo, suggesting tons of new stuff, but if we can't do this, that's massively hypocritical. We shouldn't be doing that. We've got to be able to move with the times and do stuff differently. It's kind of ironic how many salespeople can't do that and get stuck in the past, and they're using old-fashioned techniques but trying to sell new ideas. Don't work like that. But, you know, change is something that's going on. Change is a challenge. Some people like it. Some innovators actually relish it, love it, look for it. Some will be at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, will not like change at all and will be dragged along kicking and screaming. Other people will tend to be in the middle, and you might recognize where you are on this. And so I think it's a salesperson's job to help customers to manage change. We should talk about it. We should front up to it. We should recognize that change is difficult. That the change curve is like the grief curve. When you confront somebody with change, they're likely to be surprised, angry, reject it, and then start to accept it. Very similar to when we suffer a tragic loss. So yeah, people will go through these different phases. And again, I think an indicator of a good salesperson is that they would recognize where you are in that change curve phase. If you're surprised or you're angry, they shouldn't be jumping up and down, getting excited about all these wonderful benefits and the stuff that they do and shouting about how great the future is going to be, because you're not ready to hear that stuff. A good salesperson will adapt their messaging and how they deal with you dependent on where you are in dealing with change, particularly if it's a big kind of project. So it's about matching communication styles. So that's certainly one thing that, again, I would expect that you could see a good salesperson in action if they're doing that thing. So yeah, being comfortable with change, challenging the status quo. And again, we also do train salespeople to challenge customers, but they're doing it for your benefit as much as their own, in helping you move the thinking on. This is where, again, people who are skilled in communication and know how to challenge and have the perspectives and insights and the ability to bring something new to the party and not just fight for the sake of it will do a better job. Okay, so moves us into the last element of PQ, so these skills that are making great partners, and that is a future orientation, being able to look towards what it is we are trying to achieve together. So it's having those common goals, that vision, then working out the path towards that, and what are the actions that might be coming out of this, so we can work on stuff together. One of the tools we coach salespeople in, I'll be really interested to know how many of you have been presented with something like this, is a mutual action plan. Mutual action plan. In the bad old days, these used to be called a mutual close plan. Mutual close plan. Yeah, who's all that about? It's about the salesperson, isn't it? Yeah, move people towards a close. Go back to what we said about outcomes. It's about delivering the outcomes that the customer is looking for. So the mutual actions are towards getting those outcomes. So I actually do know someone who talks about these being outcome enablement plans. And the common language seems to be a mutual action plan. For us to get here, you're going to have to do this, I'm going to have to do this. Your organization, my organization, this is who, this is by when, here we go, here are the steps that's going to get us here. And it's useful because then we can start to see if we're slipping, then we need to do something about that. But we set out very clearly what both parties are going to do, because there's likely to be this combined effort to collaborate to get us to where we need to be. So this future orientation, understanding what that future looks like, where we want to be, and working things backwards. Again, for me, it'd be an indicator that you're working with a really professional salesperson that is trying to work with your best interests at heart and is trying to set up the way in which you work is going to deliver that. Yeah, so there's those 6 elements: trust, win-win focus, interdependence, transparency, comfort with change, and future orientation. This is what makes up PQ. This is what's been researched, been validated, been verified, and which you can actually do a little test around this to see where you are, how you score on those. But what I've done is I've baked it in to the way in which I'll train sales, and I'll get salespeople to think and to act, because it will be a better job for the customer. And that has to be where our focus is. So hopefully that's useful in helping you recognize some of the things that a salesperson might be doing, why they're doing it, why it's a good thing, or if they're not doing something that you feel would be consistent with those things I've been talking about, why that might be a question as to are they the ones you need to deal with. Other part we set out is that if you are partnering with organizations and seat at the table and bringing your skills to the party of the whole organization, so partnering with the organization, your own organization, here are ways in which you can gel and you can connect with them far better by bringing this stuff into the way that you operate. There we go. I feel as though I have talked a lot, talked quite fast, smashed through quite a lot of things. There weren't any questions as such in the in chat, which I don't know is either a good thing or a bad thing. Perhaps there's more people listening, they just line out on the grass. If you're listening to this at a future date, either on the podcast or kind of on the channel or just as the recording, it's the hottest day of the year in the UK so far. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, people are knocked off early, they're sat outside, I think. So yeah, just I'm not. I'm just getting really hot. And this stuff makes me hot anyway. So yeah, I don't see, or have I not been scrolling down? Oh, hang on a minute. No, I was not scrolling down. Sorry, my bad. I wasn't scrolling. Amateur, schoolboy error. Is the customer king, or is it all about following agreed actions? Harold's asked. I kind of respect for the customer, yes, but the customer isn't always right. The customer's quite often wrong. It's how well you deal with that. The customer is somebody you're working with to get those shared outcomes or combined outcomes, that win-win strategy. So Seema said, what's according to you is the best suggestion or strategy to deal with a difficult customer, whether internal or external, whilst change is not getting regularly accepted and constant rejections? Understanding, Seema, understanding. So rather than keep pushing and keep presenting and keep talking, I'd go into asking mode and understanding mode to try to see what that blockage might be, why they're pushing back at that. Maybe the change that we're trying to instigate isn't something that they can see there's benefit from. So kind of go in and understand the other party better. That's a good piece of advice in many instances, actually. So sorry I didn't pick that one up when you first popped it in there. I wasn't scrolling properly. Alex has said buyers buy features. Futures. Yeah, buyers don't buy features. Not at all. God, it's terrible selling. But I also got bad eyes and it says futures. They buy futures, not just products. Totally agree with that. Collaboration forces you to discuss long-term scalability and future-proofing. Yeah, it does. It's a more all-rounded discussion rather than what often, and I think the sales industry is guilty of causing their own problems on this, which is forcing people towards a short-term goal, hitting your quarterly target, monthly goal. We will sometimes cause ourselves problems by making people focus on the wrong thing. Focusing on buyers' future goals makes you a strategic advisor. Yeah, that's how you start to get into that role. Yeah, and advisors don't just tell people stuff, they help them make sense of it. You'll hear me talk about this until I'm a bit like a stuck record, that salespeople are sense makers. And that's what good advisors do. They help people make sense of stuff. And that can be through good questions. It could be rocking up with a decent insight, a different perspective, a way of showing people some new information they might not have had, and thinking about stuff differently. Yeah, so anticipating change moves the conversation on. Anticipating change moves the conversation on. Okay, episode will be later. In your approach sells business outcomes, not futures. Absolutely, yeah. Fanny Ganti, great advice. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, well, I've taken this from somebody else, really. I read his stuff, liked it a lot, and just kind of made sense of it into more of a full-on sales role. Alex has said there, thinking long-term encourages success, planning, expansion, all driving trust. Yeah. The longer-term thinking, it takes our conversation to a different level, particularly if a lot of others are thinking short-term. We need to do that. The best salespeople don't sell a product, they sell about a future. There we go, said that one again. Really good stuff, Fred. Awesome, good. Sorry I wasn't keeping up on the thing. I wondered why it wasn't moving. There we go, I've caught up on what was in there. I've gone slightly over what I'd set out to say. So key takeaways, I don't know if you are asking me to give you those or asking me to ask you, because I'm a trainer. That's usually how I finish the session, Fanny. I will say, what are your key takeaways? What are your aha moments? What are your learnings, action points, things you're going to do? Because it's all very well just sat there listening and being an observer. It's the things you take and do something with. That's where I'm always interested. So if anybody wants to pop in there what their takeaways are, selfish me would like this also, because it helps me get better at presenting this stuff and talking about it. I want to be as good as I possibly can to help as many people as I possibly can. So Alex has given me a cracking little line there that you might hear repurposed, shall we say, Alex? Copied. Trust builds a stronger future. Trust builds a stronger future. Awesome. I like that as a takeaway. Anyone else got stuff that they would like to share into that? Let me just scroll down in that. So there we go. Trust, win-win focus, interdependence, transparency, comfort with change, future orientation. Yep, they are the elements. I talk about that quite a lot. It's all in the book, actually. So yeah, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, Seema, please do, because you'll hear me talk about those things quite a lot. And of course, win-win-win, now that I'm pushing ethical selling. And getting customer feedback for success. Yeah, unless you're a mind reader, Harold. I mean, how else can we do it? If I was a mind reader, I'd probably use it in different ways. But yeah, if not feedback, I'm going to have to ask people. I want to hear it. Well, I usually want to hear it. Sometimes it can be hard, but if you don't hear it, you can't do anything with it, can you? So yeah, I prefer feedback so I can act on it. Thanks, Fred. Yeah, pleasure, Richard. Pleasure, always a pleasure sharing here. If you have any questions off the back of this, once you've absorbed it and thought about it, please get in touch. Future focus indeed. Thanks, Fred. Harold's giggling because I was talking about mind reading. Okay, so in that case, unless there is anything else, any other comments people would like to make, the idea is to always keep these short and sweet and punchy. There we go. One more has just dropped in there. Be a partner, not just a simple supplier. To be a partner, you have to act like a partner. I'm fed up with people who approach me talking about partnering when really they don't mean that at all. They want to flog me stuff. There's no partnering at all involved in that. So if you're going to partner, actually walk the talk as well as throw the P word in there. People are sick of that whole kind of collaboration and partnering if it's not real. So yeah, there's a little bit of insight, Penny. So cool. I'm always around if you want to talk more about this stuff. So these little lives are to sort of get the thoughts started. But if you ever want to jump on a conversation because you're a member of this network, absolutely, I will do that. Because I know we'll both benefit from it. There'll be mutual benefit out of any conversation I have with a discussion with somebody from Alchemie Network. So I am very much up for that. Just reach out and ask, and we'll drop some time in the diary, have a little chat, and hopefully leave that better. So great. In that case, I will wrap this up. We will close down this particular live, and yeah, I will look forward to speaking again in a month's time on a live where we'll take one of the elements of selling and I will expand around this. I've got a couple of, I think I'll probably go down the ethical selling route actually, because of a launch that is imminent. He says building a curiosity gap. So I'll probably talk a little bit more around that. Again, I think I'll stimulate some interesting stuff in chat and set us up for some future sessions as well. But yeah, so from my point of view, that's where I wanted to get to. I will bid you all good day and say look forward to conversations in the future. Take care, everyone.